Okay, we're entering the next phase now of our studies in bibliology. And to recap where we've been, we've already looked at an entire section on contemporary challenges, which follow the order of the topics. Here are all the challenges to get to what we're looking for, which is crystal clear. Since God is the ultimate authority and God is the one who produced the Bible, we need a Bible that really has God's authority, that's accurate, that's clear, that has been copied properly, that has been translated properly. Why? So it can actually command our consciences and bind our beliefs, okay? If we do not satisfy each and every step of bibliology, we do not have an authoritative, inspired, inerrant basis for building the Christian system of religion. So based on that, we looked at the contemporary challenges in that order. What's inspiration? What's inerrancy? What's canonicity? Did we get the right books? So once we've got inspiration and inerrancy in the autographs, then we know we have the right books. Well, now we're at the next step of, but we don't have the originals, the autographa, which, by the way, don't say original autographs because that's from the Department of Redundancy department, okay? So the fact is just the autographs or the originals. So based on that, how do we know that we have reliable copies that actually are accurate to the original documents? So that's what we're on today. So what some people call lower criticism or textual criticism. I will start by saying that when we look at the Old and New Testament textual criticism, this is one of the most technical topics that we're going to cover in theology or bibliology. And here's why. To do excellent scholastic textual criticism, the fact is you're going to have to know the original languages of Scripture really, really well. That's number one. You need to be an expert in the ancient Koine New Testament Greek. You need to be an expert in Hebrew. Okay? Why? Because then we turn around and we're looking at, all right, how many of you have actually seen even any of the copies of the manuscripts? And the answer is mostly none. I've got several books in my personal library. For example, here's a book, Scrolls from Qumran Cave Number 1. So here's a copy of the Great Isaiah Scroll and so on and so forth, where, again, you can get copies of these things, but how many of us have ever actually seen the copies? In fact, most textual critics, there are great ones out. Daniel Wallace at Dallas Seminary, he's probably one of the best New Testament critics around. Guess what? He hasn't even seen, as far as I know, every single one of these 5,000 to 6,000 to 7,000 manuscripts of the New Testament. So based on that, you've got ancient alphabets, you've got the way codices were written, that the texts were run together with no spaces. So think about how much of an expert you have to be just to engage in textual criticism. That's why in this module, you're going to be reading about a lot of the concepts of, yes, there are variant readings, but how do we know which one is the correct one? Which are the ones we should be relying on? Which family of manuscripts should we do? And how much level of persuasion do we need to commit to that? Now, I think it was module 4. I did an entire module on what is the nature of proof, what are levels of persuasion, because remember, you don't have to get to a skeptic's level of 100% certainty to be able to commit to something as true. We just need good reasons to believe it and good evidence to believe it. Hence, we're epistemically warranted or justified in committing, for example, to the truth of inspiration, that these are the accurate manuscripts. So that's why it's important to get our epistemology and evidences as far as methodology in place before we approach any of these topics. So with that, like I said, there are lots of books that, again, you can purchase on this. I'm going to give a number of readings in the written discussions and modules that you'll be able to follow. But for example, again, books and where can you find this information? Well, our Geisler and Nix text has an entire chapter on textual criticism, and you'll be reading that, reading some of the basics on that. Plus, I'll have my lectures. But plus, you can get books like, Bruce Metzger's The Text of the New Testament. Okay, so again, entire book from an expert on, textual transmission or lower criticism or all of that. Guess what? You can read for hours and hours and hours on each and every reading, manuscript theories, and so forth. Also, United Bible Societies, Nestle Aland, which produced basically the two basic critical texts of the New Testament. One thing I like about the UBS is they put out a separate textual commentary on the Greek New Testament, where for each and every reading where there's a variant, there's a note that you can go to in the text, and it says, here's the variant, here's why we chose this one, here's the others, here's why we didn't choose those. And this is significant because folks like Bart Ehrman and others claim, well, there's so many variants that you can't rely on the New Testament. Well, again, we're going to go through that argument on how do you calculate variants, how do you do that. But the bottom line is that when there's a spelling difference or one word added, the fact is it's not as if we have no idea which is probably the correct reading. And I'll go through some of the principles on that. So the fact is, why we chose certain words and manuscripts and readings, guess what? You can read all of that. But in our science and religion and Christian apologetics programs, you are not required to take Greek or Hebrew. So this is a problem, and I always encourage my theology students that in our program, this is great, but for you to be complete, you need to go out and, again, complete your languages, study the original Greek, study the original Hebrew, know how to do exegesis, know how to spot exegetical fallacies, because otherwise you're stuck with this. When somebody knows the languages and you don't, see, they'll say, well, the Greek says blah, 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 blah. See, and your response is, okay? Bad response for a Christian apologist. Or, yeah, but my expert disagrees with you, and here's what he said, and I don't really understand the argument because I know Greek, but my expert disagrees with you. That's not a real persuasive counterargument or refutation of what's asserted. So this is why eventually you're going to have to learn the original languages to, as we say, to complete your apologeti training. So make sure that you are complete in what you do. So again, there are a number of textbooks where you want to become an expert in this. Again, this is a very difficult field, but it is one of the most worthwhile fields to make sure that we have, again, accurate copies of, again, the autographa, the originals. Now, in the next segment, we're going to go through what some of the primary issues are. We'll talk about, what are the different manuscript families, what are the different types of variants that exist. So based on that, when we're done with this segment, you'll have an idea on how to make an argument for why we have good reasons to assume our extant copies are highly, highly accurate to the autographa. Thanks.